I think he's there. Elan.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear us?
Yeah, you guys sound great. Good quality.
Oh, wow.
What's up, Elan? Good to have you back. Love doing this
What's-
every year.
Season 2 renewed.
Yeah, we're holding on that. We'll talk about that later.
Uh-oh. Oh,
Okay.
boy. Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Still
Cliffhanger.
contractual details being worked out. Not allowed to say anything publicly.
Wow. I love that Elan comes in with a trial and error take, like, immediately.
Immediately. Well, he's going to say stuff I can't say, and I'm going to ask him things he can't say. So it works out.
Right. Perfect.
I
Well,
agree with that. I concur.
Well, so we mentioned before, EV Hoops is the site with all the scouting, and we appreciate you coming on again. You know, before we get into this year's draft, I wanted to touch on, Mike and I were texting last night about Mike was asking me what you thought of Chris. We were just thinking about last year. Are there looking back on how you scouted last year and how everyone played, are there any things you felt particularly, you were like, oh, I was wrong about that. Oh, I was really spot on about that. Are there any things that stick out about that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So, we really like, for instance, Felder, and I think it's too early to totally close the book on him, but Felder versus Tyler Ulis was a legitimate conversation for us. And when you kind of look back at what we've seen in the rookie seasons, I think Tyler Ulis is kind of looking like the superior prospect from an undersized point guard, class. And I think those two guys are going to be battling in the future. But right now, Ulis has the edge. So if we wanted to kind of make a judgment a year later, I think that's a guy where we were too high on compared to his fellow, tiny point guard. Another guy that I think we were probably a little bit too high on, like Denzel Valentine and DeAndre Bembry, just two guys that, you really love their basketball IQ. You love their ability to fit in and kind of get work. And then you see Denzel on Chicago. They're not giving him any opportunities to ball handle. He's really becoming a spot-up shooter. And you start kind of seeing what he becomes when the entire offense doesn't revolve around him. And then DeAndre Bembry can't shoot, still has kind of some positional concerns at his size. And I think when Atlanta needed another wing to step up, that guy became Taurean Prince and not DeAndre Bembry. And I think that's pretty telling.
We're not going to touch Marquise Chris?
Oh, yeah, let's talk about Chris. I mean, you guys probably think we were off on Chris, but he started 75 of 82 games.
Wait. Hold on. Marquise, I know my big board, everybody laughs at my big board, but I had Marquise Chris number 2. So I did not disagree with you about Marquise Chris. And I know that you are the guest, but I will say, if you look at the stat lines, Marquise Chris had a much better rookie season than Brandon Ingram did in just about every statistical category. So go ahead.
Well, so we're talking about a kid that's still 19 years old. He'll turn 20 in July, and he started 75 of 82 games as a rookie. Now, granted, Phoenix wasn't a team that's chasing a playoff spot. They're going young, but he didn't look terrible in those minutes. He made almost a 3 a game, 9 points, 4 rebounds. The fouls are still an issue. But I was actually watching a Suns game the other day, just trying to kind of go back and study some of the rookies to see how they progress throughout the year. And this is someone that projects ahead as a guy that could potentially make threes, throw in alley-oops, provide energy, athleticism. I mean, if Rashawn Holmes could shoot threes and was more athletic and, I guess, had even more upside, that's kind of what we're talking about here. And I think Chris, we haven't seen even close to what he could be. His ceiling is just, it's still really high. And I think he's somebody that didn't even understand where Phoenix was when he landed there, and his head's still spinning. But when we look at him at 21, 22 years old, he's going to be a different player.
I don't know. Still don't like him.
I don't know.
Well,
JaVale McGee
Mike,
asked.
let me flip it at you, Mike. Who would you have taken at 3? Like, let's say Simmons goes off at 1, Ingram goes off at 2. I know Chris didn't go 3, but who's your number 3 guy?
Wait, let me pull off. As in who I would take right now or who I would have taken then?
No, like looking back at the season, because like if you're saying it's Brogdon, I think that we're talking about like a Mike Miller draft, which I like what Brogdon did, but he can't be the number 3 pick in a redraft, even though he's probably going to finish second in Rookie of the Year voting.
Yeah, as much as I didn't like Jalen Brown, especially not for the Sixers, I'd probably right now go Jalen Brown over Marquise Chris.
And I think that's fair. And I look at what Jalen Brown did, and they're clearly grooming him to be, a two-way wing. They didn't need him to play. And we have no idea what he's going to become. So I just think, and I was actually speaking about this with somebody yesterday, I think it's really hard to look at a draft a year later and try to make a judgment on where you were right or wrong, even though I want to do that more than anybody. But if you do that and kind of make those changes moving forward, you might end up with a Tyreek versus James Harden situation where if you call Tyreek Evans the better player after the rookie season, which he was, and you kind of tried to look for those types of players moving forward, you're going to get burned.
Yeah.
So
I'd also have Luau over Marquise Chris, and I had him at the time,
What?
and I have him now. Luau was up on my board then, and he's up on my board now. Don't even
Mike,
touch
you
it.
want to know? We had him number 9 overall.
There we go.
So I didn't think he played poorly. I thought he's going to be. I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be a great fit alongside Ben as an off-ball cutter, as a floor spacer, and as a defender. It's exactly what you want him to be.
Absolutely. Now we're speaking the same language.
Yeah. All right. So this year's draft, overall, I guess strength-wise, like the top 10, how, relatively to other drafts, how strong do you feel like the top 10 guys are?
Well, let's put it this way. If Luau was our 9th best player last year, and let's just say that Malik Monk is our 9th best player this year, I think this year's top 10 is stronger. There's 10 guys that we have at least top 10 grades on, and none of those guys feel like a reach in the top 10. It's not like you get to 9 or 10 and you're like, oh, man, I can't believe I got to take this guy at 9 or 10. It's a really strong top 10. And we actually have 5 guys that we have top 3 grades on. So I believe it's a really strong draft at the top. When you make your way to the end of the first round, that's where I think it gets weak, because we don't have 30 guys that we have a first round grade on. We only have 28. So once you get to the back end of that first, there's a couple guys that you're kind of cringing as you have to take them in the first round, but that's the draft.
So, and I'm thinking you can answer this because it is team specific and we're setting up the specific scenario, but let me know if you can't. So let's assume, just for shits and giggles, that Markelle Fultz goes number 1 and Lonzo Ball goes number 2. If you're the Sixers at number 3, considering their makeup and considering who you think is good, who do you think is the right pick there if you're them?
Well, so right after the lottery, I went on Comcast and we talked about the same question.
Okay.
And I was pretty adamant that Jonathan Isaac was my pick. Now, the more that I think about it, I believe Jonathan Isaac's the best fit for this team, from a player that's available at that spot and a player that we have graded that high. I think he could play with Ben. He could play with Sarge. He could play with Joel. From a fit standpoint, he can play with anyone. He doesn't have holes in his game. He's not a specific niche player. He's someone that can fit in early, and as you kind of get him to realize how good he can be, something that I'm not sure he totally understands yet, I think he could become special. Like, I don't think he's going to become a franchise player, but he could become a really, really interesting, intriguing 6'10", two-way, ball handling ability player. That's a total mismatch. And my concern with him, though, from a Sixer standpoint, is he's got the foot concern, which he dealt with at IMG. He's got asthma, and he had a hip flexor at Florida State. So there's just injury questions that we don't want to be talking about anymore as Sixers fans. But if we're simply talking about him as a fit, he's the best fit.
Really?
Spike's worried he's too tall.
Well,
so
yeah.
Well, Spike, do you think he's a 3 or a 4? Because that, to me, dictates whether he's too tall.
So I think he's a 4, but I also think Ben Simmons is a 4. I think that's the problem. Defensively, I think both of those guys. Everyone here on this call has watched more Jonathan Isaac footage than I have. But when I watch him and I watch his feet, I can't imagine him guarding threes, and that's my problem. Is that both he and Simmons seem like guys that, if you have in the right spot, are and if he's that big and that rangy and that tall, the fact that you have him running around on the perimeter trying to guard threes is a mistake, right? Like he seems like he would be a sort of a nuisance around the rim, and we'd be pulling away from him. So it just does. And on top of that, the other reason why I don't think he's a great fit, like the more now we're beyond YouTube and just about reading about him, is that like I just think we need somebody on the team who's going to be able to go get points on his, and score on his own. And I don't. It doesn't seem like he's that guy at all.
He's definitely not that guy right now. But he's also not the kind of guy that you put out on the court and he's going to create spacing issues, because he's a fine spot-up shooter. He's not some deadly offensive player, but he handles like a 6'2" player. He's fluid. He can get in and out of moves with really nice fluidity and crispness for somebody his size. And he's someone that I think is just going to kind of get better and better and better. And when you look at him 6 years down the road, people are going to say, how did Jonathan Isaac get picked so late? So you're playing the long game with him. And defensively, I agree with you. I want him, from a primary standpoint, defending fours, because you don't want him to play away from the rim too much. You want the rim protecting and you want the defensive rebounding. But I think I actually do think he has the feet and the hips and the overall defensive awareness to defend multiple positions. And I'm just a big believer in defensively trying to put out lineups that can switch everything. And this kid plays into that. And that's not saying that a Josh Jackson doesn't, but Jonathan Isaac absolutely does. And if you wanted to early on make him a small ball 5, I mean, you could do a lot of creative things with him. And he's not going to be somebody that limits you. He's going to be somebody that allows you to play different ways.
A lineup with Covington, Isaac, Simmons, Embiid could switch everything all the time. That'd be pretty vicious.
Yeah, and I think that's where the league is right now. Because if you can't switch, like everybody wants to put superstars, like run them through pick and rolls to death, tire them out, get them on a bigger player or a stronger player that can take advantage of them. But if you're putting out a lineup that can switch everything, that's becoming the solution to where the NBA is going right now offensively.
One final point about Isaac. Amos Lee made a point to me that he was the perfect guy for the Sixers draft because of Philadelphia's inclination of making last names plural that aren't plural, like Alshon.
Oh, that's great.
And he was like, he's definitely Isaac's. Like Jonathan Isaacs, you talk about all the other guys, it doesn't work, but Isaac's worked. And I would say within 2 days, someone tweeted me about Jonathan Isaacs.
There you go.
Yeah.
Lonzo Balls doesn't work as well.
No, Balls doesn't work. Fultz's doesn't work. Smith's obviously doesn't work. Monk's doesn't work, but Isaac's works.
Yeah.
I think Jason Tatum's works.
Oh, Tatum's does work a little bit. Oh my God, that's terrible.
Unfortunately. Okay, yeah. Can you tell me what you don't like about Jason Tatum? I don't want to hear anything about what you do like.
Okay, so I believe he is a scorer for the NBA 12 to 15 years ago.
Yes.
He's somebody that is a mid-range operator, and he's elite in the mid-range for a player his age. His footwork is crazy polished. But as he extends deeper to three-point range, his mechanics change. He's not nearly as comfortable. The footwork into a jump shot isn't as fluid and as just natural. And in today's NBA, you got to be able to shoot the three. To add to that, I think he's very isolation dependent. He's someone that even in high school was just enamored with taking tough, isolated, contested shots. And that's kind of what he did at Duke, even if sometimes they had Kennard running the show. But when the ball touches Tatum's hands, things kind of slow down as he triple threats, jab steps, and sets up those mid-range jump shots. That's not how I envision this team growing in the future, when you want your two best players in offense to be Simmons and Embiid, and you don't want your third best player to be slowing down offensive movement.
Agree. Thank you.
Mike,
Can I ask you about one of the guys I'm very high on, higher than pretty much anybody else? I have him creeping into my top 5, and I'm threatening myself to move him up. Is Donovan Mitchell?
I think top 5 is crazy.
You think top 5 is crazy?
Yeah, top 5 is crazy.
Top 5 Sixers specific.
I don't know about that, but I would not give him a top 5 grade. I like Donovan Mitchell. I think he showed a lot of improvement this year as a shooter. He entered the year with serious point guard concerns and kind of no actual position. But then when Quentin Snyder went down and this kid was forced into playing point guard, he grew in the job. And if you were almost contrast him with like Frank Jackson, who Duke shoved into that point guard role and said, be a pure point guard, and that was so unnatural for him. I thought Donovan Mitchell grew quicker in a shorter period of time playing the unnatural point guard position, and that's why I think projecting ahead, he's a little bit easier to envision. He could be a fake point guard. He's not a real point guard, but he could be a quote-unquote point guard in your starting lineup. But Ben Simmons could actually run the point, and Donovan Mitchell could defend ones and twos, high-level defensive ability. He could be a first-team all-defensive defender type. He could defend three someday, even though I think he's really kind of short and more of like a stout, not necessarily rangy defender. But I think strength will never be an issue for him. And I think offensively, there's a chance he's somewhat close to a ceiling. He might just be a spot-up shooter, but he is a freak athlete. I just don't know if he really knows how to utilize it because his dribble's not that advanced. And his athleticism, like I wrote a note in back in November about him, and I still think it applies. I kind of feel like he has the athleticism of like Kenyon Martin in a 6'2" person, which is really weird. And it's like big man athleticism in a positionless guard. So I don't know if that's going to translate in the NBA outside of putback dunks and random alley-oops, but it's not going to really manifest itself on self-created athletic plays.
And that's why I like him, because we have Simmons already, have him be the secondary creator, straight line drives.
He's a good fit for the Sixers.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Yeah, I'm with you. I just wouldn't take him top 5.
That's fair. Well, you got something, Spike?
No, I was just gonna before we get to the second round guys. I'm sure you want to ask about the two guys I wanted to know about. One guy who now, Mike, can you tell me? Am I imagining that after Dennis Smith went number 2 on my YouTube big board, that he started popping up higher in mocks, at least around Philadelphia? Am I?
You're not imagining it. Okay. He's pretty high in my also, but yeah, you're not imagining.
Well, yeah, okay. But we were guessing, Elan, what you would say about Dennis Smith. How do you feel about Dennis Smith as a prospect, and then as he fits with the Sixers? And we might as well do Monk because he fits in the same sort of category as Smith, I think.
I am not a big-time Dennis Smith fan.
Spike was right.
But
yeah. Well, because
why did you think I wouldn't like him?
Well, I thought back to when we talked to you about Mario Hezonja and like the things that you didn't like about him, and just listening to you over the years, and like as sort of spacey on defense and ball hoggy as he is on offense, and then he doesn't really, his physical profile doesn't lend itself to like he's not rangy and he's not long and he's not tall at all. So those things all added up to me in you being not a huge Dennis Smith fan.
Well, my concerns with him are this kid, when he was younger, everybody billed him out to be this like freak show athlete. We were expecting the next Steve Francis, the next Baron Davis. And while I thought he was explosive and fast and could really get downhill when he was in high school pre-injury, I never saw it to that extent. And then post-injury, I think his athleticism has been even less. Now, he's not a bad athlete by any means, but I would almost call him like a power athlete. And that's where I think he needs to really, kind of that path he needs to go down moving forward, is become a downhill power athlete, someone that's more comfortable finishing through bodies than necessarily above bodies. And I think that's how he's going to succeed in the league, kind of like Kyle Lowry became. Now, what my concern with him is, I think he's a stat sheet stuffer that doesn't necessarily lead to wins. I think he's somebody that kind of doesn't know how to run an offense. He just randomly flirts back and forth between passing and shooting, but there's never actually a reading of the defense, of making the right play at the right time, because that's what was designed for it to happen. It's just kind of mentally premeditating which one he's going to do. And I think that's a really immature way to play basketball. That's kind of the way that Moutier played basketball entering the draft. Different players, but he's got to evolve as a decision maker. And I think with that will hopefully come winning. It just might not happen on his first NBA team. It might take him a second team to really come alive and figure out his destiny. And I think he could be really good defensively, and I think he could be a really good fit with Ben Simmons, because I actually don't want him running point guard 24/7. I'd rather him and Ben be a point guard by committee, kind of like a Kyrie-LeBron relationship, not comparing him to Kyrie, but that's who he's got to become, and that's why he could work with the Sixers. I just don't love his talent for this year's draft in the top 5.
I haven't looked at much stuff from high school, but his team at NC State was real bad, and the coach obviously was getting fired before the season was over. And so I forgive a lot of the decision making, not using his teammates much stuff. And I also look after the fact that he's coming 1 year off the ACL injury, and there's probably more athleticism there to unlock with another year of health. Do you see either of those things as valid?
Absolutely. And first of all, I'll touch on the athleticism. I think when we look at him as a rookie, I would hope that the athleticism starts to return. That's usually when it happens, 2 years removed from the injury. So that's kind of addressing the athleticism, which I think could come back. But again, I never thought it was as good as advertised pre-injury. Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of his teammates at NC State, he definitely didn't have much help. But at the same time, I thought he had enough to be, a competitive college basketball team. You had Abu to kind of throw down oops. You had Yurt 7 to post up, even though Yurt 7 stunk. You had shooters in the wings. But when you look back at him in AAU, for instance, he played with Bam Adebayo, and they had a really good synergy for alley-oops and for kind of running the floor. And that's a situation where he had a dude he could trust, and he played better because of it. And he'll have that in the league. But I still just wonder if there's too much kind of putting on a show, filling up stats, and not enough winning on this kid's resume. That said, I think he's a better prospect than Chris Dunn last year, and I like him. I just don't love him. And being taken in the latter part of the top 10, there's nothing wrong with that as a point guard. But I just like other point guards better.
I got to tell you, the athleticism thing, I don't see the now, of course, I'm watching highlights, right? But especially in the half court, he looks pretty explosive to me. Like, he reminded me of Lillard and Westbrook, actually. That's sort of how he reminded me. Now, I'm not watching as much as you are, but that's what I thought when I saw him.
Well, I don't think he has the ability to just regularly turn drives into freakily above the rim dunks. I think it's kind of there's moments like he had that Duke dunk at the end of the shot clock or at the end of the regulation. There's moments and there's flashes, and he's not a bad athlete. But like when we talk about Westbrook and we talk about Steve Francis and we talk about Baron Davis, these guys are freak shows. These guys are, all world athletes to the point guard position, and I just wouldn't put him in that mold.
Yeah.
And what about Monk?
And Monk, yeah, talk about Monk.
Malik Monk is a perfect fit for the Sixers. I mean, everybody knows that. You don't need to watch a bunch of games to figure that out. It's easy. He's a shooter. He isn't ball dominant. He's going to get a ton of clean looks on this team between Ben and Joel. Defense will be forced to account for him. There's not going to be spacing issues. He's got to improve in his ability to run off screens. He doesn't really do it with any sort of nuance or maturity right now. He doesn't really have a serious dribble game yet. Dribble's super basic. And here's kind of one of my bigger concerns with him is he is a big-time athlete, but he doesn't play regularly athletic in the half court. And I think that's partially because of his lack of a dribble to create those drives. And I think he's just – we had this conversation with Xunca. If you can win a three-point shootout and you can win a dunk contest at 18, 19 years old, which one are you going to ultimately do more moving forward? You're going to shoot threes because it's easier. And that's potentially where this kid falls into, but hopefully the right NBA team can untap that driving ability, the alley-oop ability, the cutting ability, so he's not just a three-point jack. But either way, I think he's a really good fit for the Sixers. I just don't see like a Brad Beal type here.
Are you worried about the defense?
I think he can defend as good as he wants to. I'm not saying he could be an all-defensive type player, but there's no reason why Malik Monk has to be a below-average defender. He's athletic, he covers space, he's got good hands, he's got good dissipation. I'm always really stunned when I look at how low his steals numbers were because I feel like he could jump passing lanes like an NFL cornerback or like a safety, but he just doesn't really go that hard on defense all the time. But he's a good kid. He's not a bad kid. He's not lazy. I think when a team says, hey, Malik, because we got Ben, go defend a point guard, maybe that will wake him up a little bit. Maybe chasing J.J. Redick around screens all day will wake him up a little bit. But he has the ability to be really good defensively. It's not like he's got way more defensive upside than a Buddy Hield, even though Buddy defended really well in his underclassmen days, because this kid's a big-time athlete.
Yeah. I got one more question, and then Spike can tune out while we talk about second round prospects.
You guys, by the way, you guys could make up the names of guys and debate them for 35 minutes. I would never know the difference.
I believe it.
Yeah.
We asked this to Kevin O'Connor last week. Whose jumper do you have more faith in developing into being league average, Josh Jackson or De'Aaron Fox?
It's a good question. Josh Jackson.
Interesting.
So the reason why I would say that is because I know exactly what Josh Jackson needs to fix in order to become a good three-point shooter in the NBA. I've broken down his film a ton. I feel like I know what's wrong with the shot. He sometimes releases before his peak. He sometimes releases after his peak. He's got to shoot at his peak every time. That's step one. Step two is when he follows through, he doesn't completely extend the follow-through. He doesn't flatten out and have that perfect wrist snap every time. Sometimes he shortchanges his elbow and he creates, a really bad angle that isn't consistent from shot to shot. And the reason that because he does that, his misses can be erratic. The thing about Josh Jackson, though, is when you first of all watch him dribble into jump shots, his dribble setup moves they have all-star potential. They're borderline elite. He's not someone that looks uncomfortable setting up his shot off the bounce. And he shot well from college. This wasn't like somebody that shot 32%. I think in the last X amount of games, he was over 40% from three. So he's somebody where I feel like I know what he needs to fix, and it's fixable. It's not easy, but it's fixable. And if he gets there, we're talking about an all-star. Now, I'm not so sure he will, but if we're talking about him versus De'Aaron Fox, I feel more comfortable that Josh Jackson will become a better shooter than De'Aaron Fox, because I watch De'Aaron Fox shoot threes ad nauseum, and I'm still trying to figure out what the problem is. It doesn't seem to make sense why he's so inconsistent. And it's, if you even watch him from the mid-range, he loves that free throw line pull-up jump shot. And even that, as much as he likes it, he's not that good at it. So it's like Josh Jackson has things that he's good at already that you can point to. Maybe it's closer to Justice Winslow, who shot really, really well at Duke from three, and he got to the league and it just didn't translate. But I actually think it's easier to fix for Jackson than it would be for Fox.
Okay. All right, let's dive in. Not a huge year, aside from Frank Ntilikina, for international guys, and specifically international guys that the Sixers would be interested in, i.e. not big men. Who do you like between Mushidi and Kurix? And I didn't make those names up, Spike. And are there other international guys sort of deep down? Because as the Sixers have four second-round picks, they're not going to make all those picks, and they're not going to make all those picks to be American guys. There's going to be some stash action. So tell me what you like there.
Well, I think it's a really, really, really bad international draft.
Yeah.
When you get outside of Frank, it's borderline terrible. There's nobody else in the first round that I really, really want overseas. And when you get to the second round, I believe Mushidi will ultimately pull out before the deadline because the international players can still do that. And it wouldn't shock me if Carruth did the same thing.
Oof.
But both of these kids are really far away. Carruth specifically, he's had injury problems. The meniscus has really taken away seasons from this kid. His development is slowed. He's playing for, FC Barcelona too. He's not playing for their main team. This kid's far away. Now, could he be Sam Decker in time? Could he be Omri Caspi? Maybe. But we're talking about 5 or 6 years from now, and I don't know how exciting that is. Now, Mushidi is really unique, and I think that's why I'm kind of drawn to him. He's someone that, at his size as a 6'5" shooting guard, you could have set a screen at the top of the key, and he can roll down the rim, roll down the paint. You could hit him with the rock real quick, and he's got the ability to find shooters off of that play. And I think that kind of makes him unique for a shooting guard, just the ability to kind of mix up how you're setting screens and not just have your guards being the ones that operate off of a ball screen and your bigs setting that screen. He's got the ability to shoot. He's got heat check ability down the road. And I think he's got some strength that can really allow him to defend multiple positions defensively. Now, maybe he's Aaron Harrison. Maybe not. Maybe he's somebody better. Maybe he's a smaller, poor man's version of Joe Johnson. I don't know, because he's still so young on his basketball journey, and this kid cannot come over anytime soon. So if the Sixers were to grab him in the second round, he's a good target as somebody that doesn't have to take up a roster spot, for the 2017-18 season, and maybe come 2020, he's ready to come here.
I agree with those. Anybody else that we should be keeping an eye on?
Well, and by the way, just in reference to the Sixers, they have 4 second-round picks and not a lot of roster spots, so guys that they can stash. It's a bummer that there aren't a ton of good European guys, because stashing guys, it seems like this year in particular, would be a positive for them.
So there's a kid who he actually plays for FC Barcelona. He's not relegated to their junior team, Alexander Vezenkov. He's Bulgarian. And he's declared every year for the past couple of drafts and withdrawn before the deadline. Now he's automatically eligible because he'll turn 22 during this calendar year. When he played in Greece, he played for Aris, and he was the best player. And this is a good team in Greece and a good league. He's the best player when he was about 19 years old. Signed to FC Barcelona, and last year was his first year with the club. Couldn't really figure out what they needed out of him, what that role required. Really struggled. But this year he's back. He's not a go-to guy like he was for Aris, but he's a really, really, really good spot-up shooter, borderline elite, projecting ahead. Now, he's going to have to prove that he's better than the Kyle Wilchers of the world, but I think he could be, because I think he's got the ability to speed up shot releases no matter how tight the window is. He has a resume of being the go-to guy, even if it was at a lesser level for a worse team. And he's really, really smart. He gets it. He can run off screens. He can make timely cuts. He's a really bad athlete, but he's so smart that he can overcome it. And we're talking about a second-round dart throw at this point. So, again, when you talk about Ben Simmons, you want shooters. This kid's actually one of the 8 to 10 best shooters in this draft. So I think that's a good target overseas. Cool.
Love a lefty. Okay. It feels like the guy that everybody, this always happens, who's the new hot player. For a while it was Draymond, and it still is to some extent. But everybody's talking about trying to find the next Malcolm Brogdon. There's a lot of candidates, as in older guys who played maybe role player roles at college but can translate to the pros. We're talking Sindarius Thornwell, Justin Jackson, Semi Ojeleye, Josh Hart, Wesley Iwundu, Davon Reed, a few more. Who in that Brogdon-esque role, who do you like coming out?
Well, there's a couple names I can't hit on, but
sure.
After the draft, I could always tweet them out or something. But one guy you listed, which I've already kind of been vocal about how much I like him, is Josh Hart.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Hart.
I would take Josh Hart with the first-round draft pick. And I think I'm in the minority there, and it's not like a cringe-worthy first-round draft pick. He's got a first-round grade for me. He's someone that will stick around. He's been through it all. He's worked his way up through every role that Villanova asked him to play, whether that was just energy guy, don't worry about touches off the bench, to sixth man, to third banana last year, to one of the best players in college basketball this year. I love guys that work up that pecking order, keep improving. He did, kept getting stronger. Three-point shot got better. Defensively, I think he's going to hold his own, even though he doesn't have the athletic tools that you ideally want, but neither did Brogdon. Now, I don't think he's Brogdon, but if you're looking for a Brogdon type, someone that's a senior that can come in, and by game 20, he's actually started 15 of 20 games for his NBA team. If people are wondering why he didn't go higher, I think Josh Hart's the guy.
Cool. Okay. I like that you can tell me stuff that always excites me.
I wish I had more to contribute. I already named all the guys that I know.
I'm just picking my spots. I like it. Talk about Frank Mason, because he's a guy that there's not too much dissimilar from him. Obviously, he's a point guard. Buddy Hield's a two guard. But in terms of guy who was very successful at what he did on the college level, and people are, Buddy Hield was consensus-wise a lottery pick. Maybe went a little higher because of the Kings, but people were thinking of him as a lottery pick anyway. Why is Frank Mason not getting that kind of love, even though he's a great shooter and dominated at the college level in a way that people were expecting Buddy to translate?
So now when you say love, you're saying, like, why isn't Frank Mason being deemed a lottery pick or like a first rounder?
I haven't really even seen him much in the early second. It seems like people are thinking of him in the 50s.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. I don't read other websites' mock drafts. I stay away from them. I just try to do everything as much as I can in a vacuum. But Frank Mason is somebody that there's guys on our staff that really, really like him. They think he is going to figure out a way to stick. But I'm one of those guys that's a little bit more skeptical. So I'll kind of explain where that's coming from.
Okay.
He doesn't have ideal size. He's small. I'm really, always scared off by smaller point guards, especially when they don't do anything special. And I don't think Frank Mason's special at anything. He's a good athlete. He's not a Nate Robinson type of athlete. He's got a really good spotted three-point shot, arguably one of the best in the draft, especially when left wide open. But this isn't going to be Pierre Jackson where he's taking guys off the bounce and just making people look foolish. He's not Yogi Ferrell quick on an island. He's more of a downhill point guard. But how effective can a downhill point guard be when they're, 6 foot, maybe less, not that physically imposing, and they're not big-time athletes? So I think there's concerns with him. Like, the guy on my staff who really, really likes him keeps saying, oh, he's going to be a great defender. And my argument is, this guy's never been an elite defender. He's never been a pest. He's fine. But, we never saw Tyler Ulis stuff from him defensively. So are we just assuming he's going to be a great defender because he's a good dude, because he got better? Because, it's not like I ever thought Frank Mason had some all-world IQ. He was just effective. He was aggressive. He was tough. And he got better. And so maybe he just reached a point in college where, something I call basketball nirvana, where you've been around college long enough, you've seen every single situation, there's nothing anybody can throw at you that's going to kind of spook you or get you intimidated, and you're at a higher level than everybody else. And that's where Buddy Hield was, and that's where Frank Mason was this year. Now, there's something to be said for that, and Frank Mason deserves a shot. I would draft him, but I'm not going to bet my job on the fact that he's going to make it.
Okay. One more guy, and then I got a broader question for you. Cam Oliver is a guy that is a type that I've always fallen in love with, which is like a chubby athletic tweener. And I don't know why, but I always love him. It's part of the reason why Anthony Bennett was up on my list higher than he should have been. Tell me why tell me why I'm right or wrong about Cam Oliver. I have him as a Sixer first round.
So you probably liked Derek Williams from Arizona.
Not like at like top 3 pick, but I did like him, yeah.
Okay, I mean, I like Cam Oliver. I think he's got talent. He's
a better shooter than those guys.
Yeah, I mean, he's a natural shooter, which I think is really important because he can flail his legs, he can lean back, he can take tough shots, and the touch is never affected. He's a natural shooter. He's somebody that can roll into the gym 15 minutes before practice, and he can get hot quickly. I think he's got the kind of ability. Here's the catch. I'm kind of worried he's always going to roll into practice 15 minutes before. I'm not so sure he's got the work ethic to really get hungry, be driven, and never waste an opportunity in the league. I think there's a chance he's always a tease, and he's someone that just falls in love with the jump shot when he's capable of so much more, because I think he's a big-time athlete. He could attack the rim more if he wanted to. He could be a really good defender. He's a solid shot blocker, but he might just be somebody that gets into the league, is happy cashing those checks, and just popping threes. And at some point, that becomes a journeyman.
Yeah, I feel you. But I'm still going to overrank him. I can't help myself.
Hey, I think we have too, so there's nothing wrong with that.
There you go. Who are you stepping back a bit, who are you sad didn't declare this year and are looking forward to seeing what they can do for next year? Obviously, Miles Bridges and Robert Williams are the higher profile ones. Anybody else that you're thinking about?
Brian Crawford at Wake, Devontae Graham at Kansas. Those two guys are kind of players that we expected all year to declare. So them returning to school was mildly surprising. Devontae is going to have his chance to finally play point guard. Never got that chance with Frank Mason. And the fact that they didn't get Duval, they're going to probably trot out Devontae Graham, Malik Newman, the former Mississippi State, highly touted freshman, LaGerald Vick, and they'll play a 3-guard lineup where hopefully Devontae Graham finally plays point. And I think when he does, there's a chance he could show some Mo Williams ability. So that's the kind of guy that I'm really excited to see how he blooms in year 4 at Kansas. And then Brian Crawford, he's a really fast player. He's tough. He's got good intangibles. He defends. He's improving every game as an actual point guard and as a decision maker. So I want to see how far he can come as junior. I'm slightly concerned that losing John Collins, his alley-oop partner in crime, is really going to make him take a step back, at least as a facilitator.
Yeah. One of these days we're going to have you come in and talk about big men, but we just don't give a shit.
Yeah, we got plenty. we don't want to.
I mean, think about this draft. Luckily for Sixers fans, there's no pure center that has a top 10 grade. So you don't have to look at, a guy like a Pirtle and kind of worry about, is he going to clog up that top 10 for the Sixers? There's nobody like that this year. It's not a center-heavy draft. It's top at least.
I watched the YouTube of that Lowry Marketing guy. That guy looks like he's going to suck. I'm not buying that guy at all. Is he any good, or is he going to suck?
Well, why do you think he sucks? Because I'm not a YouTube scout, so I'm surprised that he doesn't translate to YouTube.
He doesn't translate to YouTube. I don't know. I watch him a lot of the look. I make very quick yes or no, not quick. I wouldn't say quick, but very simple yes or no grades. And I watch that guy, and I'm like, not buying it. Not buying that guy. There's nothing impressive with it. Like, physically, he looks pretty slow to me. Like, I just don't know where he. Like, what is he? Is he like Channing Frye or something? Like, I don't know what his deal is in the NBA.
He's Channing Frye with better ball handling ability.
Well, I have an actual question for you, Spike.
Yes, sir.
Like, I'm a big Eagles fan, and when the NFL draft rolls around, I always do YouTube on all the potential Eagles picks.
Right.
But probably, I wonder if you do this too. If the music isn't good, that's usually giving me a percentage chance of not liking the guy. And if the first play is lame, or I think he was just in the right place at the right time, I'll stop the video and I won't move any further. So how far do you actually go into this YouTube voyage of video?
So as Mike can attest to, I actually took a half day at work to watch YouTube 2 weeks ago, that Friday, and I spent a good bit of time. Now, I will say because I know that the Sixers are not taking him, I'll make a quicker decision on him than I will on the guards. I'll watch guards more than I'll watch somebody like him. But I don't know. I probably watched a few minutes of it. I listen with the sound down, so I don't, because I have the TV on or something. So the music doesn't affect me. But I'll say they probably do have to grab me in the first 20 or 30 seconds.
Well, that's fair. Okay, so Lowry Marketing is a kid that, he's from Finland. He's 7 foot tall. He's represented his home country in FIBA events and doesn't have much of a supporting cast. I mean, there's not a lot of Finnish basketball players in recent memory. So he had to do a lot for that team, for Finland, when he played in the U19 and the U20. But he always poured in a lot of points, one of the leading scorers in events in recent years. Landed at Arizona. They needed him to score immediately as Alonzo Trier faced that really strange, mysterious suspension where we didn't know why he was suspended until midseason. And I think he kind of grew on the job. I think he didn't want to step on people's toes. He didn't want to come off as too aggressive. And he was trying to familiarize himself with what the college game required of him. But when you talk about 7 foot 3-point shooters and you consider his age, he's the best we've seen potentially ever. There's probably never been a kid this young, this able to shoot threes at his size. He's arguably as good as Frank Kaminsky was at that as a senior. And I think he's better than Bargnani was at the same age as a shooter. So that alone, I think, makes him really interesting. And if you project him ahead as somebody that can develop scoring ability, then I think he becomes an entirely different level of player. He goes from the Channing Fryes and Ryan Andersons of the world to a potential go-to scoring option. And I think a lot of that's going to hinge on what the rest of your team composition is and where you play him and what you put on his plate. But people are going to point to his poor defensive ability and his poor rebounding as concerns. But I would say if his offensive ability is as good as it can be if he reaches his ceiling, who cares if he can't defend anybody and doesn't rebound? You got to just figure that out with the rest of your team and hide that.
Yeah, I worry that he's not quick enough to get the shots off that he wants. I think he's not that strong. He can get sort of pushed out of the way. I do, rebounding wise, I'm maybe not as concerned, or at least hopeful, that, I always look for in college, what was this person doing because of the role that they were put in versus what can't they do? Like Drew Holiday was playing off the ball, so it doesn't mean he's not a good point guard. And so then you look at like Devin Booker and then Jamal Murray and stuff. So Lowry, Arizona was playing two bigs all the time. He was covering the perimeter. I don't like him at the perimeter at all. I don't think he can move his feet quick enough, but I'm a little more hopeful he could become a decent shot blocker and a decent rebounder.
Well, I guess let me ask you this. If Dirk Nowitzki came up today, and I'm not saying he's Dirk, but he has Dirk-like qualities, do you think Dirk still becomes Dirk? Because your very own Liberty baller, Wesley Scher, I'm throwing him under the bus here. But
here we go.
Wesley actually posed this to the staff and said he doesn't think Dirk becomes Dirk any longer. And I disagree. I think Dirk still becomes the player he was. So, I mean, what do you guys think? Because I think that conversation is very relevant to Lowry Marketing.
I think you have a really hard time playing him in playoff time. I think when teams are switching, I mean, you look at everybody against the Warriors, and maybe that's unfair. But if against like the Rockets or the Spurs, like could Dirk on a pick and roll switch do anything to Harden or Kawhi? I think he just gets exposed.
I mean, maybe, but we're also talking about somebody who now we're judging him and he's 38 years old. And yet at 38, last year 37. I mean, last year he was 37 years old and the league isn't that much different a year later. He averaged 18 points per game. So like, I mean, I don't know if we could like cast that sort of judgment on like the modern NBA and blanket statement on a guy that's going to be a Hall of Famer. It's not like we're talking about, Al Jefferson or David West. This is a 3-point shooter. So it's really just hiding him defensively. And I think that comes back to Lowry, where if his offensive ability is special enough, you just figure it out defensively. And I think his offensive ability makes that an easier pill to swallow because it's modern day where the NBA is offensively. It's not outdated offense.
That's true.
Well, I appreciate the time, Elan. Aside from evhoops.com, you're Elan Vino on Twitter. Anything else you want to mention throughout there? Plug?
No, I don't have anything else. I'm trying to start a Kickstarter for my cousin and get him a basketball net, but I haven't done that yet. So that might be in the future. Check it out on Twitter.
Yeah, well, if you, we're glad to retweet that. So let us know.
How's Wesley doing over there?
He's good. I always forget how tall he is.
Too tall.
Yeah.
Too tall, like Jonathan Isaac.
And we had a staff basketball game like a couple months ago, and it was the first time Wesley played. And even though he's like really tall, I didn't expect much. And he's flying all over the place. He's like a more athletic, or not more athletic, but more energized Justin Hamilton, because he also loves shooting threes. He's a really interesting player. But we also had Pavorsky playing.
Oh, how was that?
His game is just like wild.
He's got an ugly jumper.
He's like he plays like Lance Thomas, which is like not a good comparison.
Yeah.
No, not a good comparison. Not for that kid.
Yeah.
Next time there's a staff basketball game, I'm gonna fly in for it, and I might play, or I might scout you guys and yell your strengths and weaknesses at you.
Well, I want you to just reach out to Jake and ask him what I did to him that day, because I'm pretty sure I made his head spin because we ran them off the court.
Oh no! You put him on skates? Did you make him fall down? I would love
it. It wasn't with dribbling ability. We were just running like a Showtime Lakers show. It was
nice.
It was so Jake wasn't too happy about it. I'm doing a lot of smack talk. I'm trying to get Jake to bring out the Liberty Ballers for an EV Hoops Liberty Ballers basketball game.
That I like.
All right,
we got some size.
Yeah.
He keeps talking about Gouton as your like defensive center.
Oh wow! They talk about a ringer. That guy's barely he's not. I mean, he's SB Nation.
No, he's in.
Yeah,
he's in. He's in.
Well,
everybody counts. Tanner counts.
Whose team does Wesley play for?
Ooh. We had him first.
Okay, that's fair. You guys can have him.
Wow, that wasn't much of a fight.
I'd rather have less players, so we're not worried about minutes.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
Always
Thanks
fun.
for having me.
All right, thanks, Elan. All right, that's a good podcast.
Did you learn anything?
No, I mean, I got perspective. I'm never going to remember the names of the second round guys until we pick them. So, it was interesting, I guess. Yeah, but
Do you change your opinion based on what he says about like Dennis Smith or John Isaac?
No, I'm trying to like Isaac, but I can't get there. I can't
because height in a vacuum isn't a bad thing. It's
but you know what I'm saying.
If you think he can't move his feet, right? If you think he can't move his feet well enough, on the outside, then sure.
Too tall is just a funny way to say it. Like I'm just I'm taking you behind the curtain here.
Yeah. Oh, it's such what a special look it is.
Fuck you. All right. Okay. So next week, Whittington and Ricky O'Donnell. Yeah. Can you
a doubler?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, because we only have time because we have that, and then we have Bodner the following week.
Okay.
So can you get Whittington and Ricky O'Donnell?
Oh, you're asking me? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'll talk to him.
They're your guys. So,
right, I'm out of town. Next week.
Oh, I thought you could do it. Well, we'll do it during the week.
No, I can do it. We can. We'll figure it out.
Okay. Rice Ricky Sanchez podcast brought to you by LL Pavorsky Jewelers, 707 Walnut, always at llpavorsky.com. Are you down with TTP?
It's hard to remember that he's on the team.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Until you remember, and then it gets hard to forget. Yeah. All right. See ya.
All right. Pal.
Like I said, hold your head, son, and only take a second. Check it out now. People, come on while I wreck it. Like I said, hold your head, son, and only take a second. Check it out now. People, come on while I wreck it. Like I said, hold your head, son, and only take a second. Check it out now. People, come on while I wreck it. Psychopathic hit that I be did.